Imagine you're shopping for a used car and you find one that looks perfect. Then you check the Carfax and bam, it was in an accident. Would you still pay full price? Probably not. That's what happens to your car after an accident, and it's called diminished value. Today, we're going to show you how to get compensated for it. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to join us for ours. Hey, we've got a guest in-house. It's David Smith from Auto Damage Experts. David, good morning.
Saturday, everybody.
Good to have you with us. Hey, today we're going to be talking about diminished value, and there are very few people on the planet who know more about that than David Smith right here. Dave, let's start with a quick definition. What is diminished value?
Diminished value is the value lost as a result of an accident or a result of damages to a vehicle. It happens the minute the accident happens, and that number can only be restored partially by the repair facility because they can never undo what's happened to the vehicle.
Yeah, and in our intro, we talked about the fact that the insurance company really doesn't want to share that information.
No, they'd rather not. They'd rather not volunteer it if they don't have to.
Yeah. So what's our recourse? I mean, we talked about this just before we went live. You talk about the statute of limitations, and it's different from state to state, but you, the viewer, might actually be entitled to a diminished value claim.
Right. So we're talking about property damage, statute of limitations, liability. So, for example, in Colorado, it's 2 years unless it's an auto accident, then it's 3. And in Oregon, where I'm out of, it's 6 years. And in Rhode Island, it's as long as 10 years for property damage.
So if I understand that correctly, it could be, depending on where you're at, it could be years down the line, and you realize this is the first time you've ever heard that conversation, and you realize, wait a minute, I actually could be owed money.
Yeah, in fact, we have several dealerships that refer us to people trading cars in that they find out that were damaged in a prior loss, and they can't give the people as much money in trade-in. They'll actually refer us to them so that we can help them recover that money so that deal does not unwind, as they say.
So let's clarify that for our viewers. You are an independent appraiser, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm a licensed appraiser.
And that means that if somebody wants to call you in, or if they want to invoke or claim the diminished value on their vehicle, they'll call you in and you'll do an inspection of the vehicle and assess that diminished value.
Correct. So we do diminished value assessments for all parties involved. We do them for consumers. We do them for dealerships, insurance companies, auction houses. We do it for pretty much even governmental agencies we've done them for. So whoever has a vehicle or that's handling a claim for a property damage issue, they could retain us to do that diminished value assessment for them. And we do post-repair inspections. We also help with because we appraise the value of the vehicle the day before the accident, the day after the repairs are completed. And we help that consumer understand what the method and the process is to collect that money.
Do you usually discover a pile of money?
Significant amount. We pre-qualify every client too. So we consult every client, make sure they have a good claim, make sure that it's going to be worth their while. We don't want to take on claims that aren't going to help us or help the consumer look good. It doesn't do us any good to do that. So we're pretty careful about what claims we actually allow to come in. And we look at the information provided. We look at the repairs. We look at the vehicle and establish what that range of diminished value will be before they're ever allowed to hire us.
Now, we've covered kind of the surface level of what happens. Let's talk a little bit about the types of diminished value.
Certainly. So there's 3 recognized types of diminished value. There's inherent diminished value, which is the moment the loss happened, and then you can only restore part of that. There's repair-related diminished value. That's if the shop doesn't do a proper and thorough repair.
That never happens, does it?
Unfortunately, it does on occasion. We just had one last week we'll talk about here in a few minutes. And then there's also insurer repair related diminished value, insurer related diminished value, which is when the insurance company refuses to pay for a proper and thorough repair.
All right. Well, you came to the right place, folks, because I think we talk about all of those on a regular basis here at the Airing of Grievances. David, you mentioned that there was a repair related diminished value case. Can you share a little of the details on that?
Yeah, so I won't be too specific because I don't want to call anybody out, but we had a client whose BMW was damaged. The repair facility did a less than professional level of repair. They didn't follow the procedures and the color match was off. And there's some other little details. Customer was very dissatisfied with the repairs, especially after we pointed out the things we saw too. And the shop, quite frankly, wasn't confident they could achieve the level of repairs that the client wanted. So we established what the diminished value was from the loss, the inherent diminished value. And then we also established what the repair-related diminished value was, and the shop compensated the consumer with that, while the client goes after the insurance company for the diminished value from the loss.
Wow. Okay. Lots of layers to that cake. Talk to me, if you will, a little bit about the value of OEM parts.
So OEM parts are the way the vehicle is built. Original equipment manufacturer's parts. Those parts were installed at the factory. Those parts went through the crash testing, went through the certification, went through the corrosion testing, where the aftermarket parts never have. Used parts is another situation because used parts, we don't know what those parts have gone through in their previous life. And if that could impact the corrosion worthiness, that could impact the safety, the performance, or the fit, or the finish of those parts down the road.
Sure.
So there's always going to be more confidence in the factory parts that were installed or the replacement parts coming from the factory that did go through all that testing, the fitting and the corrosion worthiness, all of that, as opposed to the aftermarket parts. There's a difference between aftermarket parts and aftermarket crash parts. So in performance world, aftermarket parts aren't always a bad thing. But when we're talking about crash parts, we want to be focusing on OEM parts because those parts are actually tested and performed to make sure your vehicle is going to retain its value and do what it's supposed to do later.
Absolutely. And I know that in many insurance policies, perhaps even all insurance policies, there's a term called pre-loss condition. What does that mean, and where does the OEM conversation fit into that?
So it would be a different description or definition for who you ask, I guess. So if you ask the insurance company, that's going to be form, function, and appearance. Problem is, there's no way to actually measure that with those parts that aren't factory parts.
Right.
But when we look at pre-loss condition, to restore a vehicle to its pre-loss condition 100%, you would have to be able to replicate everything the factory does. So what we look for is pre-loss condition to the best of human ability, because there's limitations on what a repair facility can do. Even the best repair facilities in the world aren't able to 100% replicate everything the factory did.
All right, David, I want to address some of the ways that insurance companies either downplay or downright deny diminished value claims. Here are some of the things that I hear, and I'm sure you have a take on them. How about this? They say, your car was repaired, so it's just fine.
That's a pretty common response we get from one particular carrier. It says the vehicle was repaired to industry standards, therefore you do not have a claim for diminished value. Well, that's certainly not true. And it doesn't hurt. They can try to deny you the diminished value because there's no penalty for them doing that. So they can either try to deny or try to lowball you or try to give you a counteroffer with no penalty for doing so. It's one of those steps that every time they do that, a certain percentage of the people demanding it go away. If 100 people ask and they say, no, your car was repaired properly, so we're not paying you, and 50 of those people go away, then they now get to use those 50 people's monies to pay for the other 50 people.
Yeah.
You see how that
works? Not only do I see how that works, but I multiply by millions.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we always say, the clients get one of three denials. They either get a denial, they get a counteroffer, or they get a full payment. Full payment happens a lot more than what people realize. They don't want people knowing that because then more people will be asking. But when they do due to the denial, where they say your vehicle is repaired, so we're not going to pay you, that's where our clients come back to us because we consult the clients throughout the process.
Sure.
Wouldn't do me any good just to give a client a diminished value assessment and say good luck. So they come back to us, and then we help overcome the objections or the roadblocks that the carrier tries to put in front of them.
Yeah.
So that I'm resolved.
All right. Let's try this one on for size. The insurance company says your car is too old for a diminished value claim.
Diminished value has nothing to do with the age of the vehicle. It's the value of the vehicle. So several years ago, I was fortunate enough to get called into a case that involved one of Dan Gurney's former race cars. It was owned by a very well-known and wealthy collector, and unfortunately got damaged at a racetrack because the brakes failed. So the brake company's representatives actually called me to go out and do a diminished value claim on it. And this was a 1969 vehicle, but it was still worth $1.2 million. It's not about the age of the vehicle. It's about the value of the vehicle. It's not about the mileage of the vehicle either. It's not uncommon for us to do a diesel truck that's got 150,000 miles on it, but it's still a $60,000 vehicle.
Here's one more of the tactics that insurers try to use. They'll say something like, we only cover direct repairs, not loss of value. What say you?
If somebody else is at fault in the accident, they are liable for the diminished value. So either their insurance company pays it, or you're going to have to pursue the insured directly for that diminished value. Don't allow the insurance company to tell you what they're liable for, because they're only liable to their insured. The insured is the one liable to you.
You bring up a good point. Does diminished value only kick in when somebody else damages your property?
Except for one state, Georgia. Georgia actually pays first party diminished value. Nobody else does, just Georgia. It's an uninsured motorist property damage. You may still be going through your own insurance, even though somebody else hit it because they don't have insurance. So that's another thing that you can check with your policy to see if it allows for that or not.
And you know that we're big advocates on checking your policy and knowing the terms that you agree to. And the very first time you make one of those payments, you agree to it.
That's right. And unfortunately, most agents don't read the policies that are selling them to you. So it's really buyer beware on what you're buying as far as an insurance policy goes.
All right, David. So what are the steps involved in actually filing a diminished value claim?
So it depends from state to state on triggers or timelines or timeframes that you have to go by. Most states, you're going to get a diminished value assessment. You're going to then write a demand to the carrier for the amount of the diminished value plus any other expenses that you have. And then you're going to submit that. We recommend you submit that certified signature required. That way you get a confirmation when they receive it. Put a time frame on there. In the state of Oregon, they have 30 days. If they don't resolve it within 30 days, it could be held liable for attorney fees on top of it. Ooh. Some states have similar things. Washington's got something similar, but not the same. But you want to know what your state guidelines are on that. And that would be under the liability laws or tort laws that you would be able to find that. And then you would submit that. We recommend you submit it to the at-fault party and their carrier. Because remember, the at-fault party is the one who's ultimately liable. And right. You want to know that you submitted to their insurance. So that way, if the insurance company gives them any problems, you can let the insured know what their insurance company is doing.
Yeah, there's an accountability factor there.
If I was to hit somebody, I don't want that to be a hassle for them. I already caused them enough inconvenience by hitting them. And I pay good money for insurance. I expect them to do what I pay them to do.
Yes.
Pretty simple.
Man, we could end the video right there. All right. We recommend that you get prepared for a fight because insurers really don't like to pay.
Being prepared for the fight is a lot of the ways of packaging everything together. Notifying the at-fault party, notify their insurance company. The minute you do that, they realize now they're not dealing with just their typical claimant. Most people don't know who's actually liable for the loss. So once we do that and the insured calls the insurance company, goes, hey, I got this letter. Are you handling this? A lot of times that changes the direction of the claim right then and there. We tell our clients on a regular basis when I'm talking to them, nobody ever wants to get into a fight with somebody who's prepared to fight. So that's kind of the way we approach these. We approach it, if every one of us, if it's going to go to court, even though less than 1% of our claims ever have to go to court, that way they know they're in for a serious fight, and they're more likely to just pay you and move on to the easier guy next door.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes really good sense. Any other examples that you might have of things that maybe have come up over the years that you've been doing? And by the way, how long have you been doing diminished value claims?
2008. Yeah, before that, I ran body shops, ran a facility here in Portland for 12 years before that. But in 2008, we started doing diminished value, total loss appraisals, auto damage experts full time. My father was doing it in Florida even before that. So it's something we've been around for a long time. We've handled well over 10,000 diminished value claims. Just to give you an idea.
Wow.
And that doesn't count the 5,000 or 6,000 total loss appraisals or appraisal costs for repairabilities, those kind of things. I'll give you an example that we just had last week. A client reached out to us. She had a brand new Honda CRV. It got damaged. She took it to the dealership body shop to have it fixed. They were still going to put aftermarket parts on her car. I want to repeat that. She took it to the dealership where she purchased it from.
Right.
The Honda dealership with the body shop attached, and they were still going to put aftermarket parts on her car. She paid the $1,000 extra for factory parts. When we did the diminished value assessment, we did it off of the estimate prepared by the insurance company, which called for aftermarket parts. That added about $1,000 to the diminished value, plus she added the difference she paid to the demand to the insurance company. So she had to pay $1,000 out of her pocket, but it also increased the diminished value claim by $1,000.
Wow. Wow. Folks,
and there is recourse. You just have to know how to do it to make sure you get compensated. Nobody's trying to get rich off of diminished value. They're trying to be made whole.
there's the difference, right? They're just trying to get made whole. And that's the legal terminology that should be happening. And yet they continue to have brain farts when it comes to what various legal terms mean to them versus to you. David, this is great stuff, and we've covered the fact that sometimes luxury cars or newer cars or even some vintage vehicles have greater value than others. Is there an easy formula to kind of gauge what one could expect from a diminished value claim?
Not that's going to be accurate. Unfortunately, the formulas don't take into the nuances of what actually has to happen during these repairs. So my background in sales and running a body shop and doing appraisals gives me a very unique inside vision of what's happening. When we say a quarter panel has to be replaced, I know what that means. I know what that entails. I know what the downsides of that are 10 years down the road.
Right.
Most people don't. Your adjuster at the insurance company won't. And for the most part, a lot of your estimators or other appraisers won't know either, unless they've actually been involved in that work. So that's what gives us a unique insight. What I will say is that a lot of people don't realize even a small repair can have a significant impact to the value of the car, especially with certain brands. If you have a Porsche 911 and you just have the bumper cover replaced, it may only be a $3,000, $4,000 repair. It could impact the value of that car by $10,000, $15,000.
Wow.
Typical Porsche buyer, collector buyer, is not going to want to buy a vehicle that's been in an accident. And we have to determine what the market adjustment is going to be to entice him to make that buy or take that risk. And when that scale of car, you're getting up to $150,000 car, it's going to have to be more than $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, I think the takeaway for me and perhaps for our viewers is this. You need somebody like David on your side. You need to know somebody who can help you answer these questions, assess the value appropriately. And as you heard from the lineup of people that he's served over the years, you got to be neutral. You got to be arbitrary in the dissemination of that information. But you certainly want somebody who knows what they're talking about. And David, I think have we covered the majority of things that you wanted to talk about today?
Well, I just want to talk about post-repair inspections a little bit.
Oh, please do.
Post-repair inspections are a huge benefit, not only to the consumer when it comes to the diminished value claim, because we're able to physically document what's different from before and after. But it's also a huge benefit for the shop, because that consumer now has newfound confidence in the repairs that they had done. And it's being objectively judged by a third party who knows what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Having that post-repair inspection can help you establish confidence with your clientele, but it also can help you find flaws in your system and your processes. When we do a post-repair inspection, if we find flaws or things that weren't done properly or completely or correctly, our standard response is to call the shop, go over those things with them, send them photos of what we saw so they can improve the process. We always say, don't waste a failure. I stole that from Nick Saban at Alabama, but it's true. You're a failure. It's already been called out. Now let's learn from it. And my saying is now let's apply to the next 100 repairs. That's how we develop habits.
Yeah, no,
we do better and better repair each time.
That is great news and great advice. And I know I can speak on behalf of Rob and Nylund's Collision Center here in Englewood, Colorado. We value anyone who wants to do a post-repair inspection and the report that comes afterwards because it does help us get better. And the good news is we most often we get it right. But if you don't, you certainly want to know about it. At least ethical shops should want to know about it.
What I was going to say is that you can tell a lot by a shop when you let them know that we're involved while the repairs are still going on, because that car takes about another week to be ready than what they thought it was going to be before they knew we were involved. And that's fine. Take the time, do it right. Yeah. I'd rather that car a week later and say there's nothing wrong with it than have to send it back for another 2 or 3 weeks worth of work because of what we found.
Yeah, that's great stuff. David, before we go, please give some contact information for auto damage experts and let our viewers know who we trust when we need a diminished value claim or an appraisal or any of the things that go along with a post-repair inspection. Give your information, if you will.
Thank you, Eric. Our website is autodamageexperts.com. That's a great place to be able to find us. Our contact information is on there. Also, our client information form. And it will go through and give you some examples of situations. Look at our reviews. We're happy to discuss your claim with you, consult you at no charge before you ever get involved in the process so that you can make a decision that's best for you and your family. And let me just say that the relationship that we have with shops like Nylund's is special because it's a shared value situation. We want to see the shops do the very best repair they can. We want to see them compensated, and we want to see the customers made whole. When you work with people that want to see the same thing, it makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Very well said. And I know that Rob is sorry that he couldn't be here for this particular episode, but he's grateful that you stepped up and were able to come in and help us out for this one. David, thank you so very much. Raise a glass, brother. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday to you. Thank you again.
Absolutely. And folks, thank you for joining us today. We're so grateful for each and every one of you who join, follow, comment. We love you. And we'll see you again next week.